Sivapraksam Pillai. When Sivapraksam Pillai came to Bhagavan in 1902, he was, like Gambaram Sashaya, a government officer who had studied philosophy. Even while in college, he would introspect and ponder, who am I? Sivapraksam Pillai later said, I thought it was a fleeting thought. He visited Bhagavan at Virupaksha cave. As with Gambaram Sashaya, just one glance of grace from Bhagavan, and he was totally enthralled. He could see his God and Guru in Bhagavan. Being a very practical and clear-thinking person, his very first question was, Swami, who am I? This question opened the floodgates of the teaching, which to this day is saturating cultures across the world. His approach to Bhagavan's teachings was practice-oriented. Sivapraksam Pillai posed 14 questions to Bhagavan, who wrote the answers on a slate and on the sand. The answers were erased eventually. Sivapraksam Pillai wrote the answers to those questions from memory. Sivapraksam Pillai said, Swami, who am I? And how is salvation to be attained? And the Maharshi said, by the incessant inward inquiry, who am I? You will know yourself and thereby attain salvation. But who am I? The real I, or self, is not the body, neither any of the five senses, nor the sense objects, nor the organs of action, nor the prana, the breath or vital force, nor the mind, not even the deep sleep state, where there is no cognizance of these. If I am none of these, what else am I? After rejecting each of these and saying, this I am not, that which alone remains is the I, and that is consciousness. What is the nature of that consciousness? It is Sat Chit Ananda, being consciousness bliss, pure grace, in which there is not even the slightest trace of the I thought. This is also called Muna, silence, or Atma, self. That is the only thing that is. If the trinity of world, ego, and God are considered as separate entities, they are mere illusions, like the appearance of silver in mother of pearl. God, ego, and the world are really Shiva, Swarupa, the form of Shiva, or Atma Swarupa, the self. How are we to realize that reality? When the things seen disappear, the true nature of the seer or the subject appears. Is it not possible to realize that while still seeing external things? No, because the seer and the seen are like the rope and the appearance of a serpent. Until you get rid of the appearance of a serpent, you cannot see that what exists is only the robe. When will external objects vanish? When the mind, which is the cause of all thoughts and activities, vanishes, then external objects will also vanish. What is the nature of the mind? The mind is only thoughts. It is a form of energy. It manifests itself as the world. When the mind sinks into the self, then the self is realized. When the mind issues forth, the world appears and the self is not realized. How will the mind vanish? Only through the inquiry, who am I? Through this inquiry, even though it is a mental operation, it destroys all mental operations, including itself, in the same way as the stick with which the funeral pyre is stirred and is itself reduced to ashes after the pyre and corpse have been burnt. Only then comes realization of the self. With I thought destroyed, breath and other signs of vitality subside. The ego and the prana have a common source. Whatever you do, do without egoism. That is, without the feeling, I am doing this. When a man reaches that state, even his own wife will appear to him as the universal mother. True bhakti, real devotion, is surrender of the ego to the self. Are there no other ways of destroying the mind? There is no other adequate method except self-inquiry. If the mind is lulled by other means, it stays quiet for a little while, and then springs up again and resumes its former activity. But when will all the instincts and tendencies, the vasanas, such as that to self-preservation, be subdued in us? The more you withdraw into the self, the more these tendencies wither and finally drop off. Is it really possible to root out all these tendencies that have been soaked into our minds through many births? Never yield room in your mind for such doubts, but dive into the self with firm resolve. If the mind is constantly directed to the self by this inquiry, it is eventually dissolved and transformed into the self. When you feel any doubt, do not try to elucidate it, but try to know who it is to whom the doubt occurs. How long should one go on with this inquiry? As long as there is the least trace of tendencies in your mind to cause thoughts. So long as the enemies, the vasanas, occupy a citadel, they will keep on making sorties. If you kill each one as he comes out, the citadel will fall to you in the end. In a similar way, each time a thought rears its head, crush it with this inquiry. To crush out all thoughts at their source is called vairagya, dispassion or disinterestedness. So vichara, or self-inquiry, continues to be necessary until the self is realized. What is required is continuous and uninterrupted remembrance of the self. Is not this world and what takes place therein the result of God's will? And if so, why should God's will be thus? God has no purpose. He is not bound by any action. The world's activities cannot affect him. Take the analogy of the sun. The sun rises without desire, purpose, or effort. But as soon as it rises, numerous activities take place on earth. The lens placed in its rays produces fire in its focus. The lotus bud opens, water evaporates, and every living creature enters upon activity, maintains it, and finally drops it. But the sun is not affected by any such activity, as it merely acts according to its nature, by fixed laws, without any purpose, and is only a witness. So it is with God. Or take the analogy of space or ether. Earth, water, fire, and air are all in it and have their modifications in it, yet none of these affect the ether or space itself. It is the same with God. God has no desire or purpose in his acts of creation, maintenance, destruction, withdrawal, and salvation to which all beings are subjected. As the beings reap the fruits of their actions in accordance with his laws, the responsibility is theirs, not God's. God is not bound by any actions.